This is a complete remodel of the Black Cat, and I've been working on this for the past month or so, and I've been wanting to show it off, but I've been waiting till I get to a certain point, and while it's still very much a work in progress, I think I'm at a good point where I can start sharing screenshots and sharing it around a bit and getting people's opinions. So if you have opinions on this, please tell me. The Black Cat's pretty much, the design has been basically the same for, feels like forever. The current Black Cat is actually the second iteration of that world. The first world was created with Unity, Pro Builder cubes. So it was built with Pro Builder, and then I took those meshes out of Unity and I recreated everything in Blender. And that was, at this point, years ago. So here I am. January 2023. Black Hat project is around, I think it is around 1 million faces, 400 something, or 1 million triangles, around 400 something thousand faces. And if you look at this project, it's at 500,000 faces right now, but I think I can get it down to a 250,000. But yeah, let me just walk around here, show this off a little bit. Showing this off is not the main purpose of this video, but I do want to show off what I've been working on. So here's the spawn. You can imagine loading in, looking forward. This is what you see, new TV, posters. Some more information is going to be going up there. Patreon content there, and walking around. Let me show you the new bathrooms. The bathrooms are duplicates like it was before. All new meshes here. A lot more details, a lot more props going in here. This is the main area. It's got a very rustic industrial look to it now. And honestly, I've been looking at this project so much, when I actually go back and I look at the current live version of the Black Cat, it's starting to feel weird to me. The current version is feeling weird. Ultimately, the layout's the same. I think it's going to end up feeling very much the same, even though it is totally different. I'm still working on the upstairs area. But yeah, that's the world so far. Still very much a work in progress. When the world gets to a certain point where I get it up in Unity and get it up in VR chat, I will be sharing the private world link publicly. Probably be sharing it on my Twitter. But the main purpose of this video is I want to model some stuff, and I've got screencasts going so you can follow along if you want. So an item that I need in this world is a microphone, and the microphone is one of those objects in here that needs to be a bit higher detailed. It's going to be a pickup object, so players are going to be picking it up and looking at it closely, so I do want it to look a bit nicer, so I'm going to give it its own texture. I'm going to be kind of doing this like it's a tutorial. I'm going to be talking about how I approach modeling, and at the bottom left, screencast is on so you can follow along if I forget to mention what keys I'm pressing. First, we will model it out, then I'll UV it, and then I'll bring it into Substance and texture it. It should be a pretty simple model. It's basically just some cylinders, right? So let's do that. I'm going to just come over here and the first thing I'm going to do is bring my references in, and I already have some references chosen for this project. As you can see, I got some references already over here for some other things that I've modeled. I'm just going to delete those because I don't need that. I'm going to press 1 to get this perspective, and I'm in object mode. So I'm going to bring in my references right now. So I got this off of Google. I'm going to model this, and I'm going to model this. All right, so first thing, I'm gonna start with the microphone, because I feel like if I have the microphone, it'll be easier when I get to modeling the stand. I can model this part to fit with the microphone. So let's start with this. I'm gonna press Shift, right click, and bring my cursor over here, and I'm gonna press Shift A, and let's bring in a new mesh. 32 vertices should be fine. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to model a high poly version of this mesh, and then I'm going to create a low poly version, and when I bring it into Substance, I'll be able to bake the normal information from the high poly mesh onto the low poly mesh. I don't know if this mesh is going to stay 32 vertices for this cylinder, but we are going to start with that. Let's select this whole thing, Shift Z, I can go to wireframe mode, and I'm just going to scale this to match with my reference. References are super useful for getting things to look right. I used to not care so much about references, and I would just look at pictures, and I would just try to match it the best I could, because getting an image and bringing it into Blender was always like such a big step. So I just did Control R to add a loop cut there. But I highly recommend that you use references. It really helps making things look realistic. Okay, so I just added a loop cut here. I've got kind of the base pretty much filled out. I'm gonna come over here, and there's this tool called Offset Edge Loop Cut, and that can, if I select my edge here and then I click and drag, I can actually bring two other edges out from that edge. So I'm gonna go back to my cursor, and I'm gonna kind of place these. I just press G twice, and doing that will allow me to move all these vertices along its normals, I believe. We'll see, if I were to just press G and move it, it will kind of bring it, it will change the shape that we've kind of have here. So I'm just going to select these. I'm pressing, I'm holding Alt and then selecting the edge to get the whole edge. GG to drag it across the normals there. Alt select this. S to scale that in, and now we have something that looks like that. That's a pretty good start. Let's shade smooth so that it can look even better, except I made it look worse. So let's go over to, what's this called? Object Data Properties on the right. Scroll down, Auto Smooth, and I usually do 65 for no particular reason, but we're gonna just keep it there. So usually at the bottom of microphones, there's like a inset here for the screw hole. So we are going to create that by pressing, I press 3 to select face in edit mode. I'm going to press I to inset. I'm going to bring that in a bit. E to extrude, bring it up. And then I'm going back, I'm pressing 2 to go back to edge select. Alt, select that edge. Alt Shift, select this edge. Control B to bevel. And I'm going to bevel this. And I press tab to go into object mode. I'm going to press G to move this out so I can see the whole mesh here. I'm actually going to Google microphone bottom to see what the bottom of a microphone really looks like. And it looks like this. So it's not for the screw, it's for the aux cable. I knew that. So I'm just gonna try to create this. I'm gonna Control Z until we go back to that. I'm gonna bring that out, go back to edit, face mode. And I'm gonna pull this off screen so you can't see it, but I can see it. I to inset, E to extrude. So I went back to object mode. I'm gonna bring in a couple more, or I'm gonna bring in one cylinder. It does not need to be 32 vertices. Oops. It can be like 8. And I am just gonna try to create these pins that I see here. I don't know if I'm going to keep this detail on the official mesh for the microphone, but for now, since I've gotten this far, I guess I'll model it out. And this is the auxiliary, the aux cables kind of look like that. Shade smooth. I'm just eyeballing this part. This part, like I said, this is at the bottom of the microphone, so I don't know if we're actually going to be seeing this. All right, that actually looks like, I'm looking at the image here. It looks like the pins are supposed to be a little bit further apart. And that looks good. I'm gonna go with that. We got the handle for the most part. We'll deal with this in a moment. Let's go ahead and build out this top part. I'm gonna press E to extrude. Bring it up there. E to extrude again. And then I'm gonna bevel this. Control B. And that is good. Now, as I go, sometimes what I like to do is I'll like to mark my seams as I model. So like here, I can see that there's like all this information here. It's different than the rest of this. So I know when it comes time to UV this out, I'm going to want this to be its own separate thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark seams right there. If you don't know what marking seams are, this tutorial probably isn't very helpful for you because I've been going very quickly. But basically when you unwrap a mesh, you need to tell the program at what points can the mesh or can the program cut the mesh at for when you unwrap it. And marking the seams is just marking where those points are. I'll go into more detail when we actually get into UV editing. But basically the way you do that is I'm in edit mode, I have edge select, I select the edge, I press U to get UV mapping tools, and then I press mark seam. Now that we've got that, we've basically got the handle almost done. We are going to do this top part. Instead of bringing in a new object, I'm going to take this, I have this face selected, face select mode in edit mode, or the face selection tool in edit mode. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, Z to lock it to the Z axis, pressing 1 to face this direction. I'm going to scale this up to B. I've just pressed 1 to go to the vertex selection tool. And I'm just going to scale this to match this shape here, this center thing, G, Z, press E to extrude this up. And just to make sure that I don't have any inverted faces, I'm going to make sure that I have backface culling on for this viewport shading option. Backface culling is on. I'm going to select this top and bottom face, press I to inset, then I'm going to press X and delete those faces, because I'm not actually going to be able to see that. I'm going to select these two outside faces, or outside edge loops, and Control B, I'm going to bevel. We could go about this in two different ways. I'm going to select this face and I'm going to get rid of it. I don't think I'm going to need it. So I could bring in a sphere and I could like scale it in a way to where it matches this, but I think I'm just going to eyeball it and try to follow using the edge loop here. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate this edge loop. Z, press 1 to go to vertices. I'm actually going to make this its own object. So I'm going to press P and I'm going to separate this selection. So go back to object mode, select this new selection, this new object that we just created. Press A to select all the vertices, S to scale. Actually, no, I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to undo that. Press G, Z, I'm going to bring it back down into this. And now I'm going to press E to extrude, Z. And I'm just going to keep doing that, pressing E to extrude and Z to lock it to the Z axis. I don't have a top face, so it's important that I do lock it. And press S to scale. And I'm going to just try, I'm looking at this side, and I'm going to just try to follow this line all the way up. Now I just want to make it look a little bit better. I mean, it's not too bad. This is pretty good. So I'm going to grab this top loop, press Shift D to duplicate, Z to lock it, bring it up here. And then I'm going to basically do the same thing. E to extrude, Z to lock it, and then I'm going to scale it to match what I'm doing, or match it to this microphone. Shade smooth. Let's press F to fill that. Let's just look at this to see if it looks good to me. It does look good to me. The spacing up here is bit off, so I'm just gonna try to fix that a bit. Oop, I did something wrong. I don't know what I did though. There we go. That looks pretty good. Let's join these back together. I select both of those in object mode, press Ctrl J to join them. And now we have just one object here, and I guess I could join these pins to it as well. Let's focus on this little on-off switch here. So it's, I'm gonna try to model this capsule out, and then I'm gonna use Boolean to, I'm gonna add a bunch of vertices to this mesh, create a Boolean, this mesh, and kind of cut out that capsule out of this, and then model the switch. So let's do that. But first, what I want to do is I want to move my cursor to where it is in the center of this object. So it's along this edge. Press Shift A, mesh. I'm going to bring in a cylinder. Let's do 24. This doesn't really matter because this isn't going to be on the final mesh. Let's try my best to match it on this. I'm going to select these, oops, Control B. Let's do it in edge select. I think I need to scale this just a little bit. Awesome, we've got this pill shape. Let's make sure there's too much going on over here, so I'm just gonna select both these two, and I'm gonna press the / on the numpad to isolate them. And I just want this capsule object to, I want it to kind of be angled in the same way that this handle is angled, and I want the middle of it to kind of be where it intersects, which I think that's good. Bring it out just a little bit more. Okay, so let's select this object. Well, yeah, let's select this object. Let's go into edit mode, and let's create a bunch of vertices for this. And then now let's go to add modifier, Boolean, difference. Let's select this. Look at that. Perfect. It's a bit deep, but I think that will work for what we need it to be. Actually, maybe it won't. Just Control Z until I've got my capsule back. Okay, so the Boolean is back. I'm gonna isolate this. I'm scaling it in the Y direction. I think that will give us a better result. So let me make sure it's rotated in the proper way. I'm gonna hide it, see what that looks like. And that looks good. Okay, so now I'm gonna focus on building this little switch here. So that's just a simple cube. I'm going to delete the faces back here because the player's not going to see that, so there's no point in it being there. Now I just need to make sure that it's like centered with the object. I'm actually going to bring back this capsule, and I'm going to try scaling it a little bit more. I think that's a bit better, and you can see that there's actually an indent here for the switch as well in the shape of that rectangle, and I'm actually going to build that out and do another Boolean for that. So yeah, I'm just going to duplicate this cube, go into edit mode. I'm going to make sure this face back here is full, just because I know sometimes it can be a bit screwy when it's not a complete mesh. I think that's a bit much. That should be good. So let's see what happens if I add another Boolean and then I select that object. And that looks pretty good. There's like some funky stuff happening here, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. I'm also going to add a weighted normal. This should help with how this all looks. Good, we've got this thing down here. It looks like it's a screw. I will bring in another cylinder, scale it down, let's rotate it, let's try to make it the same size as that. Let's try to center it on the mic. All right, that should be good. So reminder, this is just the high poly mesh that we're going to be baking the information onto the low poly. So I'm not too concerned with the amount of vertices that are on here at the moment. I'm not too concerned with like the weird stuff happening here because we aren't going to actually be using this mesh. Though you do want to get it as good as you can so that when you bake normals for this, it ends up looking as good as it could. But I think that would be fine. Okay, so now let's start working on the mic stand. I moved my cursor over here. This is, I mean, it's just a bunch of cylinders really. So we're gonna do the base first. Cylinder, I'm gonna do 32. Tab, let's scale this. And so this the image of this mic stand is like a little bit higher than, it's not like straight on. So we're looking at like the top part of this stand. So we're gonna just kind of have to eyeball how we are going to model this. So I'm going to actually give this a considerable amount of space up here. Control B. Something like that. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Shade smooth. Let's go to the object data properties. Go to normals, auto smooth, 65. Something like, is that too much? No. I'm going to select this bottom face. And I'm going to add a little bevel down there. That might be too little. There you go. It's got these like circles in here and I kind of want to copy that. So let's first bring this down. I want the standing pole here to be its own separate thing. I don't know what this thing is, so I'm gonna ignore it. Control D, Z, scale. Let's make sure we get the right size here. And I'm going to delete that bottom face. Actually, no, I'm going to keep that bottom face. I'm going to add a bevel, and then I'm going to select the bottom face and then delete that. Let's bring this down. Let's bring this all the way up to where we want it. And now I'm going to press, okay, I just did a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to press E to extrude, S to scale, Shift Z to lock to the XY axis, and then I'm going to scale this out to where I want it to be. Press E again to extrude, press Z to lock it to the Z axis, and then I'm going to bring it up. Oops. If I can do it right. I'm going to press Control R to add an edge loop. I'm going to add an edge loop right there, and I'm going to scale this down. And that is half the thing. Cool. Let's undo all of that. And this time, let's select everything. G, lock it to the Z axis, bring it up here, E, S, Shift Z, E, scale up, Control R for the edge loop, select these vertices and bring this in here, bring this down just a little bit. There you go, much better. All right, let's create these little things here. I don't even know what to call them, but I'm gonna bring that all the way here. There's a loop there, there's a loop there. Wait. If I want extrude 3 loops down, should I do there, there, and there, just like that. Yep, that looks good. So another reminder, this is the high poly version of this mesh. The actual version, which we will make, will not be so high poly. I'm gonna add a weighted normal to make this look a bit better. That looks nicer. Okay, let's add some bevels up here. Adding a bevel to this. Let's add a bevel up here, and then we are going to inset that. So this pole here is like coming out of what is a hole here. So I'm going to make it like that, and then I'm going to press Y to separate this from that, and I'm going to press E to extrude. I'm going to extrude that up. I'm going to select this bottom face that no one is going to see, and I'm going to delete that. And let's bring this up. Cool, we are like almost done with this. We just need to make the thing that is going to hold the microphone. So I'm gonna press Shift D to duplicate this. I'm gonna bring this over, and this is just to help me scale help me scale what this the holder is supposed to, like what size it's supposed to be. Like that looks, does that look right? That looks right to me. All right, so let's start making this. E to extrude, S to scale, Shift Z to lock to the XY axis, scale this out. E to extrude, bring this up. It's gonna be kind of a difficult mesh. I'm gonna delete this top face. So this part here is like in between these two plastic pieces. That is the thing that we're trying to model here right now. I think I'm gonna delete these 4 faces. And then if I select these, I wonder if I go to face, grid fill, that does something neat, but not what I want. Grid fill, not really what I was looking for. All right, I'm just gonna select the edges that I want, press F to fill this. That'll be faster than me figuring out the better way to do it. All right, we have this thing here where a piece of plastic could go in and I'm just gonna bring it down. See, I'm getting quiet because I'm like trying to think how I should go about doing this. You have this piece of plastic where the 2 ends are popping up, but then you have the thing in between it, and there's like supposedly like a screw that's going in between both of those. So there's also like a hole here. I don't know if it's going to be necessary to model that all out. I might just put like a cylinder here and then have that bake onto the mesh, like the lower poly mesh, which probably looks something like this. Let's move my cursor here. Let's add another cylinder. 32 is fine, since it's gonna get deleted later. Let's add some bubbles, bring this to there, let's delete that. And I'm gonna just bring it and put it on the other side as well. And this should be enough to show that there's something going in between this to hold the item that is holding the mic. So let's create this mesh. This mesh is like this object is kind of a weird, funky looking object. Oops, I did not mean to do that. I'm trying to move my cursor into the center of this. Let's start with a cylinder. I'm going to delete the end faces here. I'm probably going to put a subdivide on it. Before I do that, let's put solidify. I just shaded smooth, so let's put in the auto smooth. I'm going to add some more vertices here, and then I'm going to add subdivide. And now I'm going to just kind of shape this to, I'm just going to use the proportional editing to try to shape this in a way where it kind of looks good. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm actually going to Control Z everything I just did, mainly because this kind of looks like shit. Like this mesh, this doesn't need to be perfect, and I'm not too worried about it. And I'm not going to model like this space right here, like it's got this hole there. I'm not going to model that. The big important mesh here, since the pickup object is not the stand, it's the microphone, so that's kind of what I'm most concerned with. This just needs to look like it would hold a microphone. So I'm still just going to use the proportional editing, and I'm going to do my best to make it look like the thing I want it to look like. Let's use maybe this one, maybe linear. That's not bad, I guess. I guess this looks alright. Let's apply the solidify and let's add one of these. I'm using that G, like pressing GG twice to move it like I am. That looks pretty good, I think. Let's bring this microphone down too. Let's bring that there, and now I'm going to make sure it's centered over the thing. Is this? Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm gonna extrude down a thing to make it go in there. Let's bring it in like that. And that looks pretty good. That's pretty believable, I think. Does the job. Let's apply that. Now we have a super high poly mesh here for no reason. That's okay. I guess we're basically done modeling both of these. So now we need to create the low poly version. So I'm gonna join everything, make sure there's no modifiers on here. Control J, join that. I'm gonna join those. So this is our high poly stand mesh. And I'm going to apply these. I'm actually going to duplicate this, put that there. And then I'm going to hide that. And then I'm going to select this other mesh, apply these booleans by pressing Control A. And then join everything here. Okay, so now we have our two high poly meshes. And I'm going to join those together. So I'm just selecting them in object mode, pressing Control J. So let's find this in my very organized list of meshes to the right here. I'm going to try to find it. I'm going to call it mic high poly, and I'm going to press Alt H to unhide that mic I duplicated. I'm going to find that mesh now, all the way down to the M. So we have the mic high poly mic. And now I'm going to take this high poly. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it. I'm going to right click on my mouse to bring it back to the exact position that it was at. And I'm going to rename this and call it low poly. And I'm actually going to just delete this thing. And I'm going to take this mic. Holding Control, I'm going to select the low poly versions. I'm going to press Control J to join them. So now we have the low poly mesh here and the high poly, but the low poly mesh is still high poly, so we need to change that and actually make it low poly. So I'm going to press / on the numpad to isolate the objects, and now I'm just going to go through here, and there's lots of ways to go about doing this. I usually just select the edge loops and delete all the edge loops that I want to delete, or I dissolve edges. And I just do that until the mesh looks how I want to look. The other way to do it, and this is if you have like a super high poly mesh and it just makes more sense to remodel it, you could just remodel it. You just need to make sure that both the meshes, the high poly mesh and the low poly mesh, are in the exact same location. Because when you go to bake it, it's going to bake whatever is on top of that. Like, it's going to use the information from the other object. And if the object is not on top of the other object, it's not going to make any sense. Or it's not going to work. I hope that made sense. That's what I meant to say. But yeah, I'm just going to go through here and solve all these edges. I want those, so I marked seams right there. I want to keep that. Probably don't need so many bevels there, and I'm going to just kind of go through here and delete what I think I can get away with. These probably don't need to be so big. Let's see. What does it look like if it's like that? That's probably okay. And now, does this need to be 32 faces across? Probably not, so I'm gonna dissolve that. Let's see if I do that, how's it look? That's not too bad. Alright, so this is our low poly microphone. Doesn't look as good, but it should when we're done. So I'm just going to do the same thing for this. We have... I don't want any of this, so I'm going to just delete all that, fill in this face, and that should be enough. We are never going to see the bottom of this mic stand, so I'm just going to delete that. This also definitely doesn't need to be 32 vertices across. You know, I wonder if the information from the the higher vertice cylinder on top of this cylinder, I feel like the baked information isn't really going to be anything. So I wonder if I should just start taking the high poly mesh and just using less vertices to begin with. Regardless, I'm gonna just go through, get rid of all these edges I don't want. So dissolve those. And I'm gonna completely just get rid of those two meshes. I don't need them. Let's dissolve all of those. How many faces? This is 1,000 faces. It's a bit overkill, but we're gonna get this down real quick. For bigger objects, this can be kind of tedious, which is why I said sometimes when you do this, it's actually more worth your time to just like remodel it completely, but I don't think that's necessary for this. And I think that'll do it. That looks good. Maybe I don't need this edge. Maybe I don't need this edge. Nope, I want that edge. Weighted normals is on there. Okay, let's look at the microphone. Is there anything on here that that looks good? That's fine. This is fine. Okay, so now we have a high poly version and a low poly version. All we need to do now is export them out, and then we can go ahead and start. Oh, we need a UV. We need to UV unwrap actually. So let's. I'm going over here to the UV editor tab, and I'm going to select the low poly version, and I'm going to press / on the numpad, and I'm going to go back to this view, and I'm going to X this out, and this is what it currently looks like, which is not good, but we are going to fix that. So if you aren't familiar with UV unwrapping, basically what you need to do is tell the program where to cut this mesh up so you can flatten it on the UV map. And then the flattened image is where you will add your textures. And that's how you texture meshes. What we need to do is go through this mesh, tell the program where the seams are going to be, and then unwrap it. So I'm going to put a seam here. I'm going to put a seam here. This little bottom part is going to be its own thing. I'm going to put a seam here, oops, right here, and then to flatten this little area here out, I'm going to put one right there. Press U, mark seam, and then each one of these is going to need, I'm actually going to just do all the edges, or these side edges. So the way this will flatten out, it'll be like a cross folding out from the center cube. This is just going to be like a single metallic copper color, so it's not going to take up. I'm going to scale it way down on the UV map. I'm going to go to the back of this mesh, and I'm going to select this edge loop to be, the seam right there. And then, is there anything over there? No. Alright, so how, I might just be able to flatten this out. That might be worth it. So if I look at the reference, let's see, that's not the right picture. If I look at the reference for the microphone, and I'm like looking to see how, what the like mesh pattern is of this. I'm wondering if I should almost have this fold out kind of in a similar way that I was talking about, these little pegs down there. I don't know. I think for now I'm just gonna leave them as they are, and they'll like distort a little bit, but I think it'll look fine. But that should be everything for this. So if I unwrap this now, oops, I got proportional editing on by accident. That's what we get. Now there's going to be some information from the higher poly version that is going to be on this part. So I'm going to want to make sure that this part of the mesh is scaled pretty high. We're going to be adding a lot of details to the top part here to add that grid on the texture. So I want to make sure that's pretty high. The only things I don't need to be scaled quite large are these pegs here. I don't need this to be large at all either. That should be proportional with that. This doesn't need to be very big. There's going to be some extra information on here that I'm going to draw on. Not only do I want this to probably be a bit bigger, and I'm just eyeballing and like guessing what I'm gonna end up wanting when I get to texturing. So I could be totally wrong, but I usually, no matter what I decide, I usually end up working with whatever I do. Let's straighten this out, and this is a tool you have to download. It's called Tex Tools. This does not come with Blender, but it is a free plugin. So if you do want this, I will share it. I'll find it and I'll link it below. But I'm just gonna make sure that this straightens out a bit by using the rectify tool here. And I think that should be good. So I'm just gonna move that aside. Now we are gonna move our focus to this. If I just unwrap that, that'll probably distort a little bit, but I think it will be okay. I'm gonna go to the back part of this and select this edge loop, and that's going to be my seam. Let's go over here. I'm going to do a seam here and there, and then one up here. And then we are going to do this basically same thing, but up here. This is a bit of a weirder mesh, but it should be fine. Just going to go along the cuts here, mark seam, and then this. I'm gonna get rid of that. I think this makes sense for me. Let's get this whole bottom piece, mark seam. If I select all of this, unwrap, this is what we get. We may want, so if you remember, we had the screw that was coming out from here. So I think we're gonna want this to be a bit higher. I want to make sure that we get the details that's gonna get baked on there. This actually, I'm not too concerned with the size of that. And I'm not too concerned with the size of this and that. So I'm actually gonna bring those down a bit. The biggest thing is we have those, we extruded in for those like rings that were in the reference image. So that information is going to need to get baked on there. So I want to make sure that this is large on the UV map. But I think this is good. And if you want to check, this is part of the Tex Tools as well. I've changed it to 2048. I can add a checkered map. And now looking at this, you can see because I made this bigger, the checkers are smaller. The checkers should appear more or less the same. I'm actually going to straighten this out as well. You can see that it distorted the checkers a little bit there. Let's straighten that out a bit. Alright, so normally for something like this, I would go to my UV Packer plugin and I would just pack it all in there. And this is a plugin that is not free, but it packs your UVs for you. It's a really good tool. I highly recommend it. I can't remember how much I paid for it. I think it was like $15 or something like that. I'll find it and I'll share it in the description, so if that's something you want. But for now, since I know most people don't have that, I'm gonna put this all in here. To the best of my ability, bring this in. I'm going to want to prioritize the microphone over the stand because The microphone is the object that the players are actually going to be holding and looking at the most. The stand is kind of just going to be more or less decoration there on the stage. People aren't going to be able to move it. If you remember in the old version of the Black Cat, nobody can move the stand. It's the microphone that everyone interacts with. But at the same time, I want to make sure that everything's big enough that we get all the details that we want to get. I'm going to keep, I scaled it up just a little bit more. And I'm going to hope that this all fits in there right. This does not fit in there right. I'm going to just scale it down to where this, my biggest thing, is the size of the UV. And I think that looks good. I am eyeballing everything, so I think it'll be fine. I'm just going to bring these in here. Will this fit in here? What is that? That's the bottom part there. Bring that there, and let's bring this right there, and let's bring this, that fits, so everything else should fit fine. And now at this point I'm just moving everything onto here to the best of my ability. Ooh, that does not fit, but I think because we scaled it up, we should be able to scale it down just a little bit and it still work out. So now we have to figure out what to do. What is this? This is that metal piece there. I feel like I should be able to fit it without having to scale it. If I put it like right there. Ooh, I think that just barely fits. And then I can move this. Awesome. Okay, we'll put that there. Honestly, with most of the stand, I am not worried about any of it at all. A lot of this is going to be like a single color with a grunge map or something with a different roughness. And that should be enough for making it look as good as I'd want it to look. What is that? Alright, I think that's everything. I'm gonna get rid of this material. I don't want it. Now we have our completed low poly version, UV mapped, ready for textures, and we have our high poly version. We don't need to unwrap the high poly version. We're only going to be using it to take the normal information from it. I want to make sure that shade smooth is on this and also weighted normals. Same thing with the high poly version. Shade smooth, auto smooth is on there with weighted normals. Okay, so I'm going to export these out. So file, export FBX, selected objects, mesh. I have a substance folder. Mic, high poly. This is the high poly version, export FBX. And then let's select the low poly version. Once again, you need to make sure that they are in the exact same location for this to work properly. And they are, so mic, low poly. And now let's open Substance. We are in Substance. We're going to go to File, New. I'm going to do this at 4K resolution, but I think when I'm finished, I'm going to export it out at a lower resolution. Probably 2K, because 4K is kind of overkill, especially for something like this. Black Cat, Substance, Microphone. Now we need the mic low poly, so this is like the actual mesh we're going to be using in the world. And now we need to go to Texture, Bake Mesh Maps. I unselect ID. I'm going to do the output size 4K, and in this area to bake normals, to use a different mesh for normals, I'm going to select the mesh I want. So I'm going to click that little button there, go to, let's see, where is it? Mic high poly. This information, like these sliders here, determine how far the program is going in front of every like face or vertice to gather information. If you have different or weird bakes, playing with these settings might help. Usually go to ambient occlusion and always ignore back faces, but usually other than these settings here and the ambient occlusion settings, most of the default settings should be fine. I'm baking right now. Let's see how it ends up turning out. So the bake just finished. You can see that we have a good bit of information from the high poly meshes here. So we have the switch there, the little screw that was on the reference image that I didn't know what it was. We got the screw here that goes through, and most of it is good. We have some issues here, so we're probably going to do another bake. This down here turned out pretty well too. I normally, when I do the high poly versions, I normally do have like higher poly cylinders, and then I usually cut them down, and I'm beginning to think that maybe having different cylinders is screwing up with the bakes, and we're getting results like this. I'm going to just play with the settings first before I change any of the meshes. First, let's do that so it's not going out too far. So if I look at this, I think the program isn't going far enough back to get all the details that's here. So I'm going to do frontal a bit smaller, and then this I'm going to do like a little bit further and see how that works. And it looks like while it's baking here, it does look like it's getting a bit more, and that looks a lot better right there. I think it's still going just a little too far forward, so let's do something like that, see how that turns out. I mean, you can see as it bakes here, you can see it's pulled, like this mesh here is pulling from this mesh here. So one thing we can do is separate those maybe. All right, I'm going to move this back up to 0.05. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to select both the high poly and low poly versions, and I'm going to bring this out so that it's not really a part of that. And I'm actually going to get rid of some of these vertices on the high poly version here. You can see it's like too different. You know what? So I'm just going to duplicate this, make it its own object, grab the high poly version, and I'm just going to find it. Select that, press Ctrl J to join them. I think we'll get better results with that, and I think it will be okay. Like, we're not really taking a lot of information from the high poly version for that specific mesh, so the subdivide mesh is a bit overkill. So this is the high poly one. Mic high poly export, and then let's select the low poly file export FBX. Mic low poly export. Let's go back to substance. We're going to go to edit project configuration. We're going to select the new low poly mesh. It's going to say it could screw up your project. That's okay. I know what I'm doing. And let's add the new high poly mesh, and let's bake that. Looks like something's still happening over here, so we'll see how that turns out. Well, this looks way better up here, but there we go. It had not switched to the higher value that I thought I had put it at. Awesome, I think I can live with this. So let's go ahead and begin texturing. Sometimes what I like to do is I like to add a layer with normals. If you are not familiar with Substance, this is not a free program. I guess I should say that to begin with. This is a texturing program that I use to texture basically any mesh that you see. Bit of a learning curve, but it really isn't that big of a program. I'm not going to be going too into detail on like how to navigate Substance as a beginner. I think there's probably better tutorials for that. I'm just going to go ahead and keep moving forward with texturing this specific mesh. If you're interested in using Substance, I highly recommend it. I think it's like $20 a month, so it's not really that cheap, but it is very useful, and I use it every day. So if you're me or wanting to 3D model, I think it's very important. But let's go ahead and texture this. So when you bake information in Substance, it comes in as a texture. I think it's somewhere in this tab over here. I like to create a layer and just add the new normals that I just generated. I think it's called default something, and then that kind of makes the normals a bit more prominent. This looks like shit still. Damn, why does that look so bad? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to fix it after the fact. So I'm just going to move forward and deal with it in a little bit. So let's go, and I've added a layer with my normals, which I like to do. It's not necessary, but I do it sometimes. And that way it just makes the normals a bit more prominent. And now I'm going to use my references here. I'm gonna move it aside. You won't be able to see it on screen, but it is right in front of me. I'm gonna use this to go ahead and begin my texturing. So let's add a folder. I'm gonna call this microphone. And I'm gonna add a base color. I'm gonna add another folder because this is going to be like for the handle part. Oh, why is that coming out so weird? This is really looking weird to me. So I was having some issues adding some materials to this, and I couldn't figure out what was happening, so I created a new project, did exactly what I had just shown, and it's working now. So Substance is just being, I guess, stupid for no reason. Here we are. Everything's baked. It's working now. Let's continue texturing it. So basically, we're gonna call this base, and we're gonna call this handle, and this folder is going to be the microphone. Just gonna look at my reference here. This does not need to be so shiny. I'm gonna make it a bit rougher. And basically all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna duplicate this by pressing Control D. I'm gonna add a bit of a darker tone here. I'm gonna make it a bit shinier. I'm gonna find a nice grunge map that kinda resembles what I'm looking at over here. So let's add fill. Oops, nope, that's not what I wanted. Add black mask, fill. Something like this might. That doesn't look good. I don't like that. It kind of looks like this to me. Maybe if I bring it down a little bit. Like, that's what it looks like to me. And I think I'm gonna go with that. Maybe I'll duplicate this again. Bring down the roughness. Make it a bit brighter. Maybe I can find a mask here that will add some shine to it, like just barely. I don't like that. Never mind. I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna just keep it like this for now. We have this thing here, and we need to make it darker. So I'm gonna do on/off button. I'm gonna go all the way down here. It doesn't need to be that smooth. I'm gonna press black mask, and I'm gonna paint this in to the best of my ability. But every time I'm using the paintbrush, I like to go into here, go into alignment, use UV, size, shape, texture, and then I need to bring my spacing down, and then this needs to be rotated to 90, I think. And this is good. And I'm actually masking the folder, so if I wanted to change this value, I can just come in here and do it. And I won't have to worry too much about repainting this mask or anything. Alright, now I need to find a circle. Just use this. Oop. Let's change the value here. This is fine. Now I'm using the eraser, because I'm a bit outside the line here. And I need to make sure I change this back to UV texture so it doesn't do what it was just doing there. And I think we are good. That looks pretty nice to me. Now I'm going to do the actual button itself. I'm going to go all the way down. I'm actually going to add some height to it. And then I'm going to add mask, add a fill, and I'm going to go to stripe. I'm looking for this right here. On the microphone picture, it looks like there's like some roughness on there that kind of looks like that to me. So I am just going to be adding that, and then I'm going to add a mask to that, and then paint it only onto this button part right here. And there we go. Now let's add the text. We are going to do weight, add some height, bring the roughness up, add black mask, add paintbrush. I'm gonna go to this option over here and type in font. And there is a serif font here that's pretty neutral. I'm gonna do on. I think this will be, yeah, that'll be upside down. So we need to do 180. Maybe a bit smaller, do like 5. On, and now we need to do off. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now let's do some of the metallic stuff. So that's going to be like the screw here, and then the rods at the bottom, and then some of the stuff up here. For the rods, we're going to keep it really simple. Metallic all the way up, roughness down. And I'm not going to be adding any more to it, so I'm just going to do the mask on itself. And because the object is so small on the UV, it's kind of having issues here, but I can fix that once we're back in Blender. Now we are going to do the screw. I'm going to do like a light blue color, metallic all the way up, roughness down. I think I'm going to go back to that circle. Actually, no, I want something that fades out at the end. Something like this. So now we got the screw, we got the metallics on the rod. Let's actually add it to this as well. And then let's do, what should we call it? The mesh. And this is going to be pretty similar. Probably not as rough. Actually, you know what? Let's take that off of there. Okay, so now we have this thing. We are going to bring the height down. I'm going to actually make it like black. And there is a pattern in here. I think it will work for creating, oh, I think it's the pavement maybe. Add black mask, add fill. This might work. That actually works pretty good already. Let's add black mask. Make sure we're only selecting it on there. I think I should be able to change these values as well. I want that to be a bit thicker. Roundness. Can we do that? That's not bad. If I bring this here. That is not what I wanted. I wanted that. This actually might look a bit better. Can I change the scale somewhere? Mask, rotation. Do 20. 20. Something like that might work. The distortion from UV unwrapping it is actually a bit more than I thought it was going to be. It's not bad. I might just keep it. Alright, I'll keep it. The last thing we got to do for this is like this little band here. I don't know what else to call it, but band. So basically it's got some information there that I don't know what that means, but we are going to try to replicate it a little bit. It looks like that's a little rougher. Like it's darker and it's a different roughness than the rest of the microphone. So I'm going to try to copy that. And now I just need to, let's duplicate that, make it white, add some arbitrary text here. Add black mask, add paint. Let's go to the microphone. What does it say? I'll just do like some symbols. Let's see, where is this? I think it's this. It is that. So I'm just gonna paint this stuff on. I'm gonna look at these symbols here and see if I can just kind of throw some things on there that make it look like it makes sense. I could do my company logo for one. Let's see, where did that put that? And then I'm gonna put, that doesn't look right. I have an idea. Let's go to font. I'm just gonna type out microphone, or maybe put one of these. Or memory, how about that? No, it's kind of like a brand. There you go, that looks good. I'm going with that. Alright, now for the stand, the last part. Stand, this should be pretty easy. I'm pulling the stand up to the right of me as a reference, and I'm gonna do the base actually very similar to how I did that. So I'm gonna just duplicate this handle, bring it over here. I'm gonna add a black mask to that, and then add it to that. Let's see, how does that look? Might have to scale this a bit differently. Maybe make it a bit more rough. Make this a bit more rough. And that looks good. And I'm gonna make the little intersection poles, these poles here, I'm gonna make that pretty shiny. Oop, don't want the whole thing, just want the poles. And then this part right here and here, they're supposed to, and here, they're supposed to be like a plastic. So we are gonna do something, we'll put it in its own folder, call it plastic. Change the color, it's gonna basically just be a black, make it really rough, add a black mask, and then select the parts that need to be selected. And then we're gonna bring the roughness down just a little bit, change the color just slightly. And then we're going to add a grunge map just to give it a little bit more detail. So maybe something like this might work. Or maybe something a bit more dramatic. That's too dramatic. Yeah, that works. And now we just need to do the metallic stuff, which is just, oh, actually that doesn't need to be metallic, that could just be that color. Yeah, that could just be that color, and then that's it. That would be, I think that's it. That's the microphone. So now it's textured. Microphone. I'm gonna go to File, Export Textures. I'm gonna choose where I'm gonna save it at. So I've got the Black Cat folder here. Microphone, select the output template. Since it's going to be in Unity, I'm going to make it the Unity Universal, or the Unity Universal Render Pipeline Metallic Standard, because that's the standard shader, and I basically just use that standard shader for everything, and it doesn't need to be 4K, so I'm going to export it out at 2K. So that's exported, and now I'm gonna hide the high poly one. We're gonna add this texture to the low poly mesh and see how it looks in Blender. And I think there might be a couple things I need to fix, but other than that, we should be good. It should be done. Let's go to shading. This is the low poly. We're gonna press new. I'm gonna call this new material microphone, or micropho, I guess. Texture, image texture, open, textures, microphone. Albedo, duplicate that. Let's do the metallic smoothness. Now I need to invert the alpha and bring this over for the roughness. And then I need to separate the RGB values to get the red value for, or this specific template is the metallic. And then I bring in a normal map node. Let's duplicate this one more time. Grab the normal, let's bring that over here. Change this to linear, and this is what the mesh looks like. I think we can scale this up just a little bit. Let's go to microphone. Let's see, where is it? Metallic, mesh. That would be this. I think that's much better. So let's export it. Let's open this up again. Shading. Let's bring in the new values. That's much better. Now we had some issues over here, and I'm just using a plain color for this, so I'm just gonna scale it so that we don't see that. I think that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. So the high poly version is 7K triangles. The low poly version is 1500, so that's pretty good. Let's scale this down. Oh, we don't need that anymore, and we don't need that anymore. I'm gonna make both these objects their own separate objects. Let's set origin to center, and let's actually just bring it over to the stage and see how it looks. The microphone is quite large right now. I use these cubes as to represent humans. So this mic is, the mic stands pretty tall. I think that should be fine for now. And I think that's it. I think we're good. That's the microphone. Sweet. I think that's it. That's all I got. So I hope this was helpful. I feel like most of it was just rambling, but those two Blender plugins that I mentioned, I will link them below if you want them. UV Packer, like I said, is not free, but it is very good and I like it and I use it a lot. I think this turned out pretty good. If you have thoughts on the new black cat, on the work in progress, like I said, this is a work in progress, so don't judge this project too hard. But give me your input. I definitely appreciate it because I definitely want to hear how people are reacting to what might potentially be the upcoming changes to the world. I think that's all I got for you, so bye.